Picture this, you're cruising at 30,000 feet. But then all of a sudden you or someone else on the flight passes away. What happens to that person? Are they thrown off the plane or are they stored somewhere? Well, today we're going to find out exactly what happens if someone passes away on an airplane. I'm Charlie and today we're going to find out what happens if you pass away during a flight. But before we take off, why not subscribe and press the notification bell too. You may be thinking, get real, no one ever passes away on a plane. But according to flight attendants, it's much more common than you'd imagine. For example, a month ago, a 34-year-old woman passed away on a flight from LA to Melbourne. There were 2 doctors on board, but they couldn't save her. And a year ago, a British woman passed away on a flight from Pakistan to the UK. In that case, the passengers had to sit with her body for 2 hours on the tarmac. That's because for some reason paramedics were not able to get onto the plane. But what's the real procedure for when this happens? Well, in reality it differs from airline to airline. Some larger and more luxurious airplanes have something named a corpse cupboard. This is basically a large locker which is able to transport an average-sized body. For example, Singapore Airlines Airbus A340 had these corpse cupboards. But most smaller and less luxurious airplanes do not have these cupboards. And amazingly, not all flight attendants are actually trained to deal with this situation. All European airlines have to comply with EU safety regulations. This includes being trained to use defibrillators and first aid procedures. In the USA, things are a bit different, and airlines pick their own training. But in most cases, what will happen to a body which has passed away is they'll be moved to an empty row. If there are no empty rows available, then they're moved to business class. Just imagine that, paying for business class and then sitting next to a corpse. Also, sometimes the bodies will be covered up with a rug or a sheet if one is available. One flight attendant named Annette Long told Business Insider, "I'd probably put a blanket over the person." She said she'd do this so that people would not look or take photos of the body. After all, flight attendants want to make sure there's dignity and respect if someone passes away on the flight. But did you know that flight attendants have a secret code to say whether someone's passed away on board? That code is Jim Wilson. If you hear your pilot or flight attendants mention the name Jim Wilson, it means someone's passed away on the plane. After all, 50,000 corpses are flown every year, so they have to have a nickname. This way the passenger can be talked about while not disturbing the public. So they may say, "Please be seated while we remove a passenger, Jim Wilson, from their seats." Or they may say a flight attendant is needed to deal with Jim Wilson. But has there been any reported times when people have passed away during a flight? Well, the answer is absolutely. On the 1st of April 2019, a passenger passed away on a Qantas plane. She was Australian and 34, and she passed away despite 2 doctors on the airplane. She was going from LA to Melbourne, her home, and doctors did try to save her on the plane. Fellow passengers on the flight expressed their shock on social media. One person wrote on Snapchat, "Someone actually passed away on my flight home. So sad." Also in March of this year, a 63-year-old British grandmother passed away. She had a heart attack on an EasyJet flight, but the family say they do not blame EasyJet. The woman named Anne Rudkin was flying from the UK to Malaga, Spain. Also last year, a 36-year-old father was traveling from the UK to New Zealand. He was with his wife and 2 young kids, but he passed away. The plane had to stop in Dubai and the man named Simon was removed from the airplane. And in 2014, a 23-year-old woman passed away during a flight. She was going from London to New York City. And on this flight, again, a doctor was on board and he did try and help. But his efforts were fruitless and she did pass away despite only being 23. Recently, someone asked on the question and answer website Quora what happens if someone passes away on a plane. And a woman named Sue Jackson responded, telling her own story about her husband. She said, "My husband passed away during a long-haul flight from New Zealand to Los Angeles. They were in business class and he went to sleep and never woke up. Apparently he passed away due to lack of oxygen in his lung. When this happened, a doctor who was on board came to try and check him out and try and save his life. Sadly, it did not work and Sue's husband could not be saved. So instead, his body was covered up with a blanket and she lay beside him until they landed. The plane was then cleared of everyone except the crew, herself, and her husband Keith. But then a lot of people boarded the airplane. Police, paramedics, customs officials, the coroner, immigration, and airline management all came into the plane. He was then put on a stretcher and wheeled away to a nearby hospital. Apparently on his death certificate, the place of death says Flight NZ5. And apparently when it happened, Sue was even given a minder during the flight. This minder stayed with her the entire flight and made sure she was okay, as what happened was so sad and shocking. Sue Jackman's story really is sad, but it does go to show exactly what happens if someone passes away on a plane. So I hope now your curiosity about what happens if you pass away on a flight has been quenched. Check out the poll in the top right corner and vote for if you've ever been on a plane with a corpse. Personally, I haven't, and I hope to never be. If you want some more amazing videos, then check out my second channel. There'll be a link to that on screen in a moment. But as always, thanks for watching. Check out some more videos on screen right now. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.